All right, we are live, March 24th, 2025. Phones are open, 505-510-4226. So if you have any questions, comments, complaints, if you want to get all Karen on us, go for it. Phones are open for disputes, debates, whatever it is. For the longest time, I was suggesting that we have to quarantine from the alt media just long enough to get a firm foundation, and we have it. So now it's let's go ahead and it's open season on bad ideas. And we shouldn't be reticent to share the truth, even if it tips over a few apple carts. I noticed some people are annoyed when I say that Stanley Kubrick did 9/11, and they're usually responding to a straw man. I'm not saying that he planted the bombs and killed people. I'm saying the entire thing was a movie, superimposed over the news cycles, performed as street theater with a lot of military-grade fog machines and Hollywood-level crisis acting, concurrent with dozens and dozens of drills, mass casualty drills. I mean, we've explained this thing ad nauseum. It was a psyop, and I think there's too much focus put on these big world-transforming psyops, and people kind of miss the fact that every day is a different psyop. And when you get it all in context, the significance of these big ones minimizes. It becomes like just another fake tree in the forest of fakery. But I did produce a t-shirt. It's on Teespring called Stanley Kubrick Did 9/11, and there's a link in the newsletter. And the artwork is from the Auto Hoax It coloring book. So in case you were wondering where that came from, and yes, you can get it in the coloring book, or you can pick it up on a t-shirt. And I think even a pillow and a tote bag. It's all on Teespring. Joined by Diana South, Jungle Jim, Penguinati, Auto Hoaxer, Immortal L, Restless Bear, The Frugal Snowbird, Flozik, Roxy, Let's Go, Ted Stryker. Awesome. Okay, we have a good group of people already here on audio. So if you're listening on audio, whether it's Radio King, RadioNet, Paranormal Radio, you can join us in chat. Just go to infiniteplane.live, and that'll take you right over here. So let's go through the points of interest. Kubrick did 9/11, yeah, Metascript clues. Now, when I'm talking about upsetting apple carts, I have some stuff here that needs to be confronted if you are of the opinion that the coincidental alignments between entertainment and fake news psyops are the result of just happenstance or an intervening higher power. We have, I think, we have mounting evidence. I mean, every day it's piling up, and we're actively seeking it. That shows that, no, there's another element to media that people don't consider, which is the monolithic coordination and synchronization of all of it, where the fictional universes are overlapping with the real world all the time. We're often talking about Luigi Mangione, right out of the Joker, right out of the madness. So I put this mind map up today, predictive programming proxies with Trump and Obama in opposition. And this is just scratching the surface. But the contention here is that the world stage characters, specifically politicians that we see that drive the news cycles, have fictional counterparts that often foreshadow what they're going to do. And so it's not just terror attacks and mass shootings and such, but there are all sorts of aspects to this alignment between entertainment and news. What people used to call predictive programming, that term has never been properly defined. And it doesn't encompass real-time coordination between entertainment and news, what we call concurrent programming. So the weak side of the predictive programming analysis is that the critics can say you're cherry picking. You're just making up meaningless connections. But when we're pointing out the real-time alignments of it and its coordination with political agendas, etc., it becomes pretty undeniable that we're looking at the intentional manipulation of mass opinion, and it's exercised through, as the Republican Tea Party types used to say politics is downstream from culture. Well, this kind of taps into that. And we're talking about Edward Bernays level influence, treating the mass mind as a single entity to manipulate. So here we have on this mind map 5 movies: Megalopolis, the series The Boys, Captain America Brave New World, Man in Full, and Do the Right Thing. On the left, it says Trump. On the right, Obama. And attached to each of their names are their movie counterparts. Mayor Cicero, Stan Edgar, the CEO, Sidewinder. We're talking about the character that represents Obama. Wes Jordan, the mayor. Trump, represented as Charlie Croker in A Man in Full. The Homelander, Caesar in Megalopolis. And what I'm pointing out here is that not only do you have these fictional counterparts to real world politicians, but the real world events are mirroring what happens in the movies. And in the first 3 listed there, Captain America, The Boys, Megalopolis, you specifically had assassination attempts, and specifically had the instances of the movies having to change. The Boys changed the title of the season finale. Captain America altered the trailer because the timing of the release was so close to the assassination that they felt like they had to change it. So these are things that have been noticed. And then it gets deeper when you look into the actors, and you find that the same actor who represents the Obama in this dialectic, in this dynamic that's been in existence since the 80s, if you look at Do the Right Thing. But when you look at this, the same actor is in the same role in multiple movies. So this is just one thing we've been looking at, just noting how they use the movies to condition us to scenarios involving real people. But here, we're finding here, is that there's a structure to it, there's a pattern. And not only that, but it's predictable. And we're pretty spot on when we're predicting what kind of elements the incoming movies are going to promote. So this is not the result of mere coincidence. Because we're looking at a meta-narrative, a story. And a story is not just about Donald Trump and Obama. It's about what they represent. And it all makes sense when you consider the role of Higher Ground Productions, the Obamas producing Leave the World Behind. Leave the World Behind, about the West sinking, the EMP blackouts, everything collapsing. But it keeps referencing 1619. And that's what Obama represents in this dynamic. He's 1619. Trump is 1776. This is critical race theory, the progressive utopianism. You got to change everything because it's unfixable. And then Trump represents 1776, kind of this idealized past. We just need to go back to when things were great and make it great again. So they each represent the extremes of the political spectrum. And this back and forth between them in these movies seems to be a story that has been written into their world stage roles. I mean, we're talking about crisis actors who get more than one gig. I mean, Trump is just basically in The Apprentice season 36 or something. All right, let's see. Thank you for joining Pete Trippa, and I appreciate the support there. He picked up the Exit Trutherville course, crash course in auto hoaxology. Exit Trutherville is my best attempt to take all the important concepts related to media skepticism and examining media with a full awareness of media fakery into a digestible course that somebody in Trutherville could grasp. It's really not meant for MSM, mainstream mediated. It's meant for the conspiracy theorists, the MSM plus, those who are MSM positive. And yes, if you still believe in second shooters and false flags and QAnon, you are MSM positive. You have a mind virus. But IPS is like the Pfizer of mind virus inoculation, in the sense that we are the only entity pushing back against the counter narratives and controlled opposition talking points that have just really gone unchallenged. Like, the mainstream never corrects itself. Alternative media doesn't either. And I noticed they must be at a low point because they're talking about shape-shifting reptilians and cities beneath pyramids. Like they're really scratching the bottom of the barrel. JFK files, nothing burger. You had the Epstein files, nothing burger. It's nothing burgers all the way down. They're not getting anything. So, Metascript clues. Now, I ran this through Perplexity. And it did say the pattern you've identified across several films and TV shows suggests a reoccurring theme of political opposition, mirroring real-life figures. And we have, again, a list of characters. You can find this on my blog, but these are alignments or resemblances that the mainstream media takes note of. It's not just us. Like we were talking about Mickey 17, which I have to go see, in which the character that Mark Ruffalo plays is essentially representing Trump. He turns his political party into a cult. He does a little dance. He wants to create an all-white planet, and a bullet grazes his face. And I'm sure that's just the surface, so I have to go watch it myself. But I knew that movie would contain predictive programming elements because of the fact that the trailer, which I saw when I was watching that Mel Gibson movie Flight Risk, the trailer had a scene where the protagonist was wearing a raincoat and he was smiling, and he looked exactly like Luigi. Not a coincidence. Okay, so I also am using Perplexity and other platforms because what I want to do is back up all of my claims with videos, links, and all of the relevant news articles. So you're going to find that the Wikipedia is exceedingly well cited. Everything is documented. And so when I'm saying that this is an extraordinary coincidence that Captain America, The Boys, and Megalopolis all came out concurrent at the same time as Trump getting shot. No, these aren't coincidences. And again, this is just scratching the surface. Now that I think about it, I could probably add on the season finale from Batman Caped Crusader, which also came out at that time. And you had the character representing Trump, Rupert Thorne, who at the very end of the season has his right ear cut by a sharp-edged Batman boomerang as a warning for what's going to happen in the second season. So right now I see that as foreshadowing what's going to happen in the second term. But we have many more examples, but I was just pointing out here that this pattern is showing that there's nothing random about concurrent and predictive programming, and it's even on a deeper level. It suggests here that there's like a parallel story going on, and there is. It's the prefabricated history that they're just implementing day by day. And if that sounds like a stretch to any truther, you really need to analyze or reconsider what you're positing when you're saying a terror attack is fake or a shooting is fake. Because if they're passing off a fake event, what does it become? It becomes a footnote in history, an incident. It becomes something in the historic record. So the idea here that our entire history is being written in advance is not far-fetched, especially when you consider how the fake news is what leads the real reportage. So all the dupes are following the fakery. So the conspiracy's big, but it doesn't involve everybody. By necessity, most are in places of, I'd say, mostly need-to-know basis when it comes to insider stuff, but most of them are ignorant. For example, there's no reason to think necessarily that somebody like Elon Musk would necessarily know the ins and outs of the fake shootings. But, I mean, maybe. It depends. Because there's questions as to whether he knows that space is fake, because he may not have the security clearance. Another thing, too, is that people don't have to be in on the conspiracy because the box that they're in manages their perceptions. So it's kind of like they act in defense of their own belief systems. And we see this a lot. All right, let's see. Steve says, at least the Ukraine war is going great. In the news today, they downed 33 Russian reconnaissance drones in 4 days. Probably just video game footage taken out of context. You know, these last few wars have just shown us how it's all just rumors and propaganda. It's a propaganda war. And the truth is really the least of anybody's concern. All right, let's move on. Truthers test MSM positive. So let me go ahead and add some to this. Mainstream mediation creates a worldview that is curated to serve the interests of world government and steer us in the direction of the power elite's vision for humanity's future. And there's a reason why we have mass compliance with the World Economic Forum and these entities that are, I would say, utopian. But conspiracy theorists who don't go along with the program generally fall into what I call MSM plus, where they have to invent additional narratives to explain away the stuff that doesn't make sense to them. And this is where you get stuff like QAnon, lurid tales of satanic sacrifices, blood-drinking Democrats, deep states, alien abductions, all that stuff, demonic aliens, the one that like scratched Tucker Carlson in bed and left claw marks, that kind of stuff, or second shooters, the idea that Trump is fighting the deep state and he's on your side, that all falls into the territory of MSM plus, meaning more stuff piled on top of what people already believe. And so their operating assumption here is that the media is not telling the whole story. So you just have to go down some rabbit trails and get some additional facts. The problem with this is that they do not subtract. So if the media reports 50 dead, they say, yeah, 50 died, but it was a sacrifice. Or something along these lines. They never subtract. And this is the main distinction. I refer to them as death clingers, and they can't let go of fake dead people. Because I think it's because when they believe the headlines, they're emotionally attaching themselves to the event. Which is why I say you should never believe headlines. If you believed that American Airlines plane hit the Black Hawk, if you believed it the night that it was reported, you just didn't have enough information. So you are a low information believer. It's better to be agnostic and say, I don't know, let's wait a few days. Maybe it was a drill, which is what I said. And what was it? Oh yeah, that's right, it was a drill. It was a continuity of government evacuation drill having to do with nukes. So it happened during a drill. How predictable. But again, if, the people who believe the stories at face value, as Mark Twain said, it's easier to fool a person than convince him that they've been fooled. It's all emotional manipulation. And as an off-world stager, my mind is off the grid when it comes to their propaganda matrix. I'm not emotionally entangled with any of these stories. Like, I just kicked a hornet's nest. I was on Twitter, and there was a bunch of QAnoners talking about how Diddy abused Justin Bieber. And there's like dozens of people talking about it. And I've never seen any evidence to support this. And they say the same thing about Britney Spears, that she's trying to tell them through her interpretive dance moves that she's an MK Ultra Illuminati puppet and she's going to set the children free. So they've created these like martyrs out of Justin Bieber and Britney Spears. And I'm talking about QAnoners. And so I'm over here and I'm noticing, I'm like, okay, here's the tweet. Shadow of Urza. Justin Bieber shared a cryptic Instagram post that shows shipping containers. Is he trying to tell us something? So people are looking at a childhood photo of Justin Bieber and a shipping container. And this is an influencer, Shadow of Urza. I think he's like 800,000 views, a lot of traction. And of course, what is he trying to tell them? He's trying to tell them that the Hollywood elite are transporting babies in shipping containers. That's what you're supposed to infer from this. So I just pointed out, and my tweet here has been viewed 7,000 times, and I'm just being called the worst names. I said, I think it's weird how Justin Bieber has become a QAnon martyr with Britney Spears. You people live in your own fictional universe. By the way, it's been more than 10 years, and you haven't saved any children. It's about time, I think, you put down the crack pipes. And I spelled crack pipe with a Q. because I don't want to offend, regular crackheads. Well, here I have people saying, Diddy raped him. What do you have against saving children? I said they weren't saved because they don't exist. They're faker than Sandy Hook children. Scott Kohler says you sound vaccinated. Seriously, you want to fight this battle? We know where the kids are. Anyway, it goes on and on. I have about 50 comments here, and they're all basically telling me about how Diddy and Beaver are this, it's like this horrible scandal. But some of these people are really leveling the accusations at me, suggesting that I am a adrenochrome drinking satanic vampire. And it's like, no, I'm just, at this point, out of the picture. I thought Q was dead. But their argument is, if you don't want to save the children with us, you are a pedovore. That's their refutation. I think it's a sickness, honestly. I think they live in a fan fiction universe, and I don't believe that Justin Bieber cares about them. These drills are dangerous, says Esteban. Yeah, I know, right? Hey, if there's a mass shooting drill at your school, take your kids out of the school, because 99 out of 100 times, if they do a hyper-realistic school shooting drill, there's going to be a school shooting there. And nobody ever points out the fact that the drills seem to precede shootings, but they never prevent them. You would think that the schools that do the drills would be the ones with the low body counts. But no, it's the ones that do the drills that day that have their students mowed down time after time. See, it's a pattern, right? And that's another thing we're adding into the wiki. We're putting down the fake news stories, the concurrent and predictive programming, and the concurrent drills. Because it's a one-for-one. Everyone has a drill and a fictional counterpart happening in the entertainment universe at that exact time. And again, we're just noticing a pattern. Okay, so getting back to this, those infected with MSM+, and again, truthers all, by and large, test positive for MSM, they experience agitation, rage, they're mad. They're mad at Bush, they're mad at Cheney, they're mad at Dr. Fauci, they're mad at Klaus Schwab, they're mad at cirrus clouds and 5G towers. They're paranoid about everything. And they have a sense of powerlessness because the MSM mainstream world doesn't take them seriously. They're trying to save the world from evil, and they're considered to be kooks. And it's because, well, you are. What they don't know is that the manufacturer of the blue pill that subdues the majority of the population also manufacture the red pill. And that is designed to preoccupy those who are resistant to the blue pill. They're still addicts to toxic misinformation. All right, let's see. Kelly George says, shipping containers are in the Kendrick Lamar video, not like us. What is the significance of shipping containers? I mean, we had the Suez Canal shut down. It's been consistently linked with stuff. Like there was the union at that port that were protesting and they were on strike. And some said it's because the trafficked victims in these shipping containers were making too much noise and they were trying to expose the issue. But nothing ever comes of it. Lord Laney says the people can't see through it because Metascripters are getting ahead of auto-hoaxing and compromising, control-opping the auto-hoax movement. Well, interestingly, Candace Owen came out yesterday and said that the WHO is going to lock down the internet the way that we locked down the world, but this time because of a cyber pandemic, which they have declared to be inevitable, as they did the pandemic. And I've been saying since Musk acquired X, that acquisition represents disease X, which the WHO said would be the big one. That the big one that shuts down the world next is going to be a mind virus. And the mind virus will not only be blamed for whatever right-wing terror shuts down the power grid, but they're also going to say it's perhaps, I guess they're going to put some kind of controls in, like mask your mind, vax your mind. I'm not exactly sure how it's going to work, but I'm certain that they're going to demonize the healthy super spreaders like me. And by healthy super spreader, I mean we can talk about misinformation, malinformation all day long and critically examine it, and it doesn't really affect us. But they're operating on the assumption that this information radicalizes the mentally ill, and then they become school shooters. So you'll notice that the left and the right both agree that the mass shooters are mentally ill. They're always in agreement about this. And that has always kind of stood out to me as significant, and I can see why now. Because their insinuation here is that the reason they became mass shooters is they either caught a mind virus on 4chan and Discord, or if they lean left, they caught it on Reddit. But both sides are in agreement that mass shooters are a problem, and that you catch the mass shooting mind virus by getting politicized through X or Reddit or Discord. Okay, Isabel Ann says, why aren't they mad about the Chinese junk in the containers ruining our planet? No, it's the space junk that has them mad. I noticed this before. It's like nobody gives a about the whales anymore. The whales be damned. Nobody cares. It's all about space environmentalism. And that is the next thing. They've even brought up space hurricanes, space weather, but space environmentalism has replaced saving the oceans for some reason. Wayfair 2.0. Yeah, the Wayfair conspiracy. So I've looked into those, and look, they're horrifying, and of course you want to look into it because you hate the idea that people are trafficking children under the guise of selling furniture, that it's that easy. And these things, sadly, are believable. It's often the case that the things that we're looking at or we're talking about seem believable, but that goes down the fallacious route of appealing to the motive or the assumed motive of the bad guys, and it's not leading with evidence. Like, just because you can conceive of Hillary Clinton eating babies doesn't mean she's eating babies. So we have to kind of walk it back and, just add a dose of reality. For example, if you go to your local prison, the worst criminals that do the worst things aren't elitists who go to eyes wide shut parties wearing masks. No, it's just regular people, just normal, mundane people. It's like the evil and sickness is evenly distributed. It's not a thing that you can just attach to the rich or some small group. You just cut that off and we're pure and saved. So the Q movement has always, I think, led people who have good intentions by their emotions. And it's like, screw the facts. The facts will happen later. Let's go save the kids, go into the sewers, go into the pizzerias. And again, they were led in circles, and I think the only thing they did was they voted for Trump. Like, let Trump save the children, and it never happened. If they really cared, something, I don't know. I'm just saying they don't really care. It's all just for show. It's I guess you'd call it virtue signaling. Don't you want to save the children? Oh, you don't believe that Justin Bieber is signaling to us, then therefore you're one of them. And I pointed out that they care about saving the children like environmentalists care about saving the environment. Look at how environmentalists live. Al Gore with his $33 million air conditioning bill. Or Leonardo DiCaprio with his mega yachts. And just go down, look at all of the major loudmouth environmentalists. Greta Thunberg had, I think it was candy wrappers just all over the back seat of her Tesla. Like, total mess. What's up, Howard Boyd? Thanks for joining. Says grace and peace, Timmy Buddy. Ted Stryker says you called it. Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're consistently calling it. And if anybody suggests that we're making connections that aren't there or don't mean anything, no, we are regularly predicting things. And if you've been listening for any length of time, you noticed. I said at the end of the year, Las Vegas is getting the nuke. And what did they get? Well, they got fires, but it was compared to Hiroshima multiple times. It was said to have gone nuclear. So metaphorically, I said, get ready for aerial immolations. And then we had explosions in the sky, planes hitting helicopters, plane crashes. We talked about months ago. Elon Musk is going to be accused of stealing the election and fomenting right-wing hate that becomes violent, and they're going to use this as an excuse for a Antifa uprising. And right now, as we speak, they're going around burning Teslas, putting bombs at Tesla sites. This is a story that I haven't really spent a lot of time on, but there have been many Cybertruck attacks. I mean, it's been labeled terrorism. In fact, I was just looking at a story, a Tesla bomb. I think they actually had bombs at the location. Incendiary devices at Austin Tesla showroom. Austin Tesla dealership bomb investigation, suspicious devices. So all of this we predicted. We also noted the coincidental alignment between Luigi Mangione shooting the CEO and the same storyline contained in The Madness. So when Luigi happened, I said this is going to be the spark that sets off a left-wing kind of a insurrection against what they will consider to be a fascist takeover of the government. So it's class warfare. And I said specifically class warfare. And right now, you have stickers going up around the country. I've seen flyers here and posters that say, no war but class war, with Luigi on it. So life follows Netflix. And we've been consistently doing this for a long time. So anybody says that we're not making meaningful connections, they're mixing us up with the gematria people who never have accurate predictions and haven't figured out that the news is fake. Mazel says, I saw 10 new Tesla charging stations in a parking lot. Yeah, I have to wonder if these are real attacks. I mean, I just seem to recall lefties all about saving the planet, saving Gaia. I thought electric vehicles pleased Gaia. And it shows you what their real intentions are. They don't care about saving the planet. It's always been political. It's always been politics first. Same with all the environmentalists. The ones who actually want to save the planet are useful stooges and dupes. And their naivety is a shield that gives the power-hungry political movement behind it cover. It's a stalking horse. When they put out Greta, I was like, oh, that's just Al Gore and pigtails. You know, they got to put a new face on an old agenda. So if you pick up the course, Exit Trutherville, you get my 1 hour and 11-minute breakdown of the fundamentals. In addition to this, you get the World Stage Deprogramming Guide as a PDF, Auto-Hoaxology, 2nd edition as a PDF. 3rd edition will be out this summer. I want a few more months to add content. And I've included in the package a number of these graphics, which I think break down in a visual form, in a very simplistic way, what we're talking about here. So we have to conceive of the worldview that we all internalize as simply a simulation, a model that we all operate within. So we all agree on what time it is, what day it is. We agree on the weather, but maybe not on what causes it. We agree on, for the most part, the backdrop of history. We may disagree at a certain level when it goes far back, but as far as like recent history, we're all on the same sheet. And to the extent that we're all on the same sheet, we all have the same presuppositions, and we all accept the same conditions, yeah, that would be the world stage. And it's a closed system, meaning anything that is considered beyond alternative media, anything that's considered to be, I guess, skeptical of their claims or what they consider to be denialism, they try to marginalize it. So what the accepted ideas is what I would call the closed system of the world stage. And the world stage is the, again, world of accepted ideas, and it includes all of the mainstream content, entertainment and otherwise. But within this closed system, you have your Woketown and Trutherville subsets. And these are the free thinkers who think they're free anyway. They think they're free because they don't trust the normal perspective. And if they lean left, they find themselves in Woketown. and they learn that the world's problems can all be blamed on systemic racism and racism at the top. And America is this force for evil, and it needs a radical overhaul, progressive utopianism. If you lean right, you find yourself in Trutherville, where you see that progressive utopianism is the enemy, and the answer is to go to the past. Like MAGA, Make America Great Again. Traditional values. A rejection of media, whereas Woketown rejects church. So you have this schism they've created, but this is where you go if you're a free thinker that sees through the main picture and you're restless about it. This is where the red pillars go. But this is all contained in the universe of ideas where the reported news is real, where the psyops that we constantly call it as fake actually happened. And it matters that they're fake. So we're just pointing out that there's this world of fakery that goes unchallenged. And if you remove the assumption that all these things were real, your perspective of the world is fundamentally changed. I think for the better. It's like leaving a toxic bond with a cult in a lot of ways, because the media is in fact a filter. So if you look at this chart, everybody is in the box called the programmed. Above it are the programmers, but the programmers wouldn't really consist of necessarily people who are completely in the know. The entertainers, the people in media, even those in the military, the DHS who do the psyops, they might only be let in on the scope of media fakery in their small compartments. I don't think there's any point where you're just given a total debriefing about how the world works. Only place you get that is here. So that would be the deprogrammed. Auto-hoaxers, media skeptics, and non-believers. And the difference really is that we reject a lot of false beliefs or things that we cannot substantiate. It doesn't mean we can replace it. So if I say I don't believe that space travel is real, it doesn't mean I have an alternative explanation for what they're doing. Whereas conspiracy theorists and truthers will supply their own answers. Oh, well, they're doing it because of a secret space program. And like with every issue, they don't reject the essential claim. So anyway, I have a lot of these charts included in the course. Let's move on. Most of you already know pretty much everything that's in there, but I think it's important to have it all in one place. So if someone wonders, well, where do you get off saying that the news is fake? One question that I heard leveled in my direction was, how can you be confident calling news fake? Well, it's a matter of I think we'll have an article about it here. How can we confidently call things fake? So just to explain our methodology, because I do think we need to care that our reality has been augmented with fiction. Last January, the big story was drones in New Jersey. And if you remember, New Jersey residents were reporting symptoms of radiation poisoning because of drones. Well, there weren't any drones. And when the drone thing went viral, I said it was a hoax. So you had thousands of drone reports and it went global. And then Mick West and some others did some work where they took the metadata from the drone sightings, compared them with flight paths, and they ruled out 100% of the drone sightings. It was a mass panic. I think it was intentionally created. But my point here is really that people believe stuff with no evidence all the time, and they're easy to manipulate. And so how can we be confident calling things fake in the media? I think we have to make a distinction between low information belief and informed disbelief. It's because we have more information. So what gives us reason to think something's fake? Well, one, extraordinary claims need to be questioned, first of all. So if there's something like right out of the movies, which is how generally people compare these things, it's worth looking at. But there are hoax indicators. There are obviously the indicators that we point out happen to be Scooby-Doo, type justice, like one episode of Scooby-Doo, it's a cartoon basically where something happens, the bad guy does something, the investigation happens, and by the end of the episode, you know who did it and why, you've read their manifesto, and they're on their way to jail. So the mass media portrays an event, and they're like, oh, this shooting happened, this is the guy who did it, and this is what he said on Twitter, here's his manifesto, and you know the whole story before the end of the day, before the blood is dry, and the sides of the political factions are responding with these boilerplate responses. Yeah, it's probably fake. I mean, it's like routine at this point. Other examples, life does not really follow Netflix. I mean, I'm constantly remarking on how life follows Netflix, but what I really mean here is that the fake events that make up our fake history, which is a work in progress, these events do in fact follow Netflix with regularity. Real life doesn't do that. And yet we're consistently noticing how this does happen. Drills and psyops happen at the same time. Very consistent thing. I have some other pretty good examples here. This is actually from Dark Knight Rises. This is a couple of clips, but this kind of illustrates one of my points here. So this is significant for a few reasons. One, Christopher and Jonathan Nolan. These are two directors I would consider to be metascripters. And to their credit, you've got Batman, Fallout, Oppenheimer. Interestingly enough, they have a third brother who is a hitman, codename Oppenheimer. But in Batman Dark Knight Rises, Batman tells his partner to wear a mask even when he's alone. He says, it's not for you, it's to protect the people you care about. So where have we heard that before? So this line about wearing a mask even when you're alone, it's not for you if you're healthy, it's to protect the people you care about. If you're working alone, wear a mask. This is from 2012.
You missed the spot.
If you're working alone, wear a mask.
I'm not afraid to be seen standing up to these guys.
The mask's not for you. It's to protect the people you care about.
Okay, so the mask is to protect the people you care about. Now, this is 2020. I'm sorry, this is 2012, and it's predicting 2020. So what happened in 2020? Well, we had the virus, right? Well, Batman now hands him a spiked ball that looks like a COVID. But it's a smoke bomb. And he says, count to 5 and throw it. So he counts to 5 and he throws it. And watch what happens.
Count to 5, then throw.
Okay, it blows up into a mushroom cloud. Now, I think this is significant for a couple of reasons. One, the mask thing, the COVID-looking ball. Then count to 5 and you see a mushroom cloud. Well, this is the same director who 10 years later did Oppenheimer. Same director whose brother did Fallout, which again connects to this. So my thinking here is that this is foreshadowing. Not just the directors, I think way in advance he knew he was going to do this, that he was going to do Oppenheimer, but that the director of Oppenheimer would be supplying the imagery for when they fake the nuke. And so count to 5, in my opinion, refers to 2025. Mask, COVID ball, count to 5, mushroom cloud. So I'm thinking that if you look at, and interestingly enough, Jonathan Nolan's Fallout was delayed because of the fires in Los Angeles. They were doing Fallout Season 2. But of course, the whole agenda here is nuke and then Fallout lockdowns. It's all kind of spelled out here. So they have the mushroom cloud. So what I'm suggesting here is that the imagination and the subconscious are targeted by the entertainment media, and the news media targets the logical mind. That they're influencing you emotionally and getting you drilled. You're doing drills in your mind. You're pre-experiencing things. They're paving neural pathways for you to follow later, like a robot. Lean Dion says, popular new red pill dealer Ian Carroll. Yeah, I knew that guy was sus the first time I saw him. that this is some kind of an agent, a guardrailer. He's going to be the appointed, like he's like another Russell Brand, basically, where they have these promoted individuals who now become the official red pill dispensers. He was on Rogan where he said any fakery with space and the ISS is to hide the secret tech and the aliens. See, that is typical. That's MSM plus. The mainstream view, space station's real. We notice it's fake, and instead of saying it's fake, the MSM plus will say it's fake because they're hiding realer stuff. They're hiding advanced alien tech. So they invent stuff to fill in the cracks. It's like there's a big puzzle here, and they don't have certain pieces, and they invent stuff, or they force pieces in, when in reality, we may not even have the pieces to fill it in. The answers may not be available, but they're always introducing stuff. So that's meant to mislead you. So if you notice any fakery, now you're looking into something else that doesn't rule in the possibility that space travel is fake. That's why I say guardrails. The idea here is that someone's heading in a certain path where they're going to find out everything's fake. So you give them an alternative explanation that preserves the lie. Virgin says, I've been seeing more people wearing masks at the grocery store. I'm fine with it. I really am. It's like, yeah, please, just wear it on your face so I know where you're coming from. It tells me a lot. I mean, I understand there's valid reasons for wearing it, and you can usually tell when there's a valid reason. But if it's a political statement, yeah, it's basically I compared those to the Let's Roll American Flag bumper stickers after 9/11. It's like, why don't you have a Let's Roll 9/11 flag on your truck, on your car? Are you not against the terrorists? Are you a terrorist? It's like you're either for the terrorist or you're against it. And in 2020, everybody who wasn't complying essentially was the terrorist. You were siding with it. It was really just a conformity test, a conformity indicator, a virtue signal. Okay, moving on. So here is another point, because I don't think what I'm saying here constitutes an extraordinary claim. According to, and I'm being very conservative here, 1% of the news is fake. Let's just say it's 1%. Just 1%. And that doesn't fully even give credit to the fact that all of the real news is coming from an institution, an agency, a company that presupposes all the fake news before it was real. The whole system is reality compromise. But let's just say 1% of the news is fake. We have to consider the fact that if it goes unchallenged, as it does not go challenged at all, that nobody really does, you can't change it. We have to recognize that this does, in fact, put us in a fictional universe. If space is fake, then it's safe to say we live in a fictional universe. We live in a false explanation, a collective Truman Show. These aren't exaggerations, and these aren't extraordinary claims. But one of the major guardrails, and I think this is one of the final guardrails. See, Truthville is a collection of orthodoxies and beliefs, alternative explanations that posture the believers on the opposite side of the spectrum as the wokes. And it's a set of guardrails that keep people locked into the program. And each one of these major beliefs has a counterpart on the other side. So, for example, on the left, you've got your climate change. On the right, you've got your geoengineering fears. And I think that the guardrails have all been effectively dismantled. But one of the main ones that still holds a lot of people in Trutherville is the mistaken notion that the coincidences that they're observing in media are somehow the result of a higher power, like God is working through the directors, or these are, because they reject the mainstream explanation that these are mere coincidences. Mainstreamers will say everything you're pointing out about directors and actors and the relationships between future events is all coincidence, nothing to see here. That's the normie view. The truther view is that, no, that's crazy to say nothing's going on. However, there's no way that man could do this, therefore it's a higher power. So they have this default explanation that the synchronization between propaganda and propaganda, that presented as entertainment and that which is presented as news, that this synchronization is somehow beyond the capabilities of the PSYOP entertainment complex, which is vastly underestimating their demonstrated capabilities. Mass mind control is an ancient art. It's finely tuned. And I think I put in the end of Autohoaxology something from Art of War about the supreme art of war. Let me get the exact quote. Yeah, if you're waiting on a press pass, just send me an email, infiniteplainsociety@gmail.com, and I will respond with the tracking number. Sun Tzu, the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. And I would say that the Psy-War has subdued the enemy, and the enemy is us. We are considered to be the enemy of the power elite in this context, that we were the target of the Psy-War, and we were conquered. And if you say you're not conquered, prove it. Show me you're off the grid. Because if you still fall for any of the mainstream psyops, if you're still a believer in their cult, yeah, you're in their cult. You have been mentally subdued. Braveheart says, what do you think about the book called The Secret and the effect it had on people? I think it's interesting, but I don't have a lot of use for hopium, and I don't think it's rigorous. I think they're kind of soft selling what is probably a real science. The idea of magic, for example. I believe the Lemites refer to it as a science and an art. But, I mean, I'm open to this notion because of the phenomenon of synchronicity. But I don't believe that there are people who are walking around as genies manifesting whatever they want in life. And there's a lot of people who smugly say that they manifest their stuff. And if your life's crazy, they say you manifested it. It just seems like holier than thou, like God loves me, not you. The simulation loves me better. But no, I always require evidence. I don't take people at their word when they're talking about self-manifested miracles. But I am interested in these ideas. But again, it's a watered-down distillation of like a century of New Age thought. And it goes much further than this simplified version of the law of attraction. Because I think it has to do with the role that the imagination plays in what I consider to be our, more or less, the word is co-creative, as I might use it. But look, I'm not the one to listen to here because I don't believe the universe even exists. Like, you think flat earthers are bad. What about those of us who don't even believe in it? Like, I know it exists. I know we're on this thing. But I don't think the universe comes into existence until it's experienced. And not only that, but I don't think that time is as linear as it looks when you're staring in the rearview mirror. And I think that our ability as what we are, because I think this universe is built around us, to choose, select, manipulate, or cause outcomes is one of the major things that is hidden. And this is what would fall under the category of magical philosophies and how this all works. But you notice that this all presupposes that you have a soul and that your soul transcends the body, and it may have some access to outside of time and space information, influence. But you'll notice that in the dominant paradigm where you're just an evolved ape with a big ego, any such thinking is pathologized. Yeah, I'm a no-earther. I'm shape ambivalent. I don't think the universe exists, and so I'm kind of like, I'm out here in my own place. But again, it's because I definitely do not have a problem with evolution. I don't even have a problem with spinning ball Earth necessarily. It's the worldview that concluded that we are latecomers we evolved, and it's going to continue to go on without us, because it creates this notion of a dead, static universe grinding to a halt, eventually going to collapse on itself, and that it's already, like, basically, we are on a trajectory that's going to end at some point. And I don't think it works that way. Truth Hurt says the secret was mostly about gaining material things. It was a joke. Okay, so here's what I find interesting about it is I find that the what they describe as the law of attraction, I find it mostly synchronicity happens to involve like information and events unfold that bring about one getting into contact with the information you're seeking, like that old adage about when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And sometimes it almost seems like information itself, as an aggregate, has an attractive power or capability. So, for example, I was walking around listening to a podcast, and they were talking about General Michael Flynn. It was this QAnon anonymous podcast, and they were giving a history of General Michael Flynn, who's big with the Q movement. So that's in my mind. I'm thinking about it, and I make a random decision to stop at a Goodwill to go through their book section. And in the book section, I see a book by someone named Michael Flynn. So already I'm thinking that's kind of a weird coincidence. So I pick up the book, and the cover has a man with an eye patch and a mushroom cloud behind him. And I start reading it, and it's about a think tank. And they find out that there is this group of people who have this advanced computer, and they make predictions, and they're steering history by manipulating world events. And once they find this out, the secret group has them killed off one by one. But anyway, the main character gets all the information she can about who's behind the conspiracy and releases it in what's called the Q files. And the Q files are faxed to every newsroom in the world, and the cabal is doxxed, and the mobs hunt them down. So the connections here are, one, we had just started talking about newsbenders, and the idea in newsbenders how a small cabal with access to a supercomputer were in fact writing the news years in advance. So we were talking about that, talking about Michael Flynn and Q, and the book is by Michael Flynn about a Q file and contains a lot of these same elements. So my point is, how did I find this book? How did I find a book that connected with my life and what was on my mind at that very moment? So I'm saying here is that it's about the information itself, that maybe the universe is made of information and doesn't become material until it's experienced. I have another pretty clear example recently, and I'm pointing this out because it happens with books where your focused concentration is activating even your imagination. So there's an intensity to the focus. So I was reading a book called Name the Wind, and it was about a wizard in hiding who was disguised as an innkeeper, and he hired a chronicler so he could give his backstory. Sort of like Interview with a Vampire in a way. And during the story, he's describing how when he was in school, one of the professors took him onto a roof 20 feet high and pushed him off the roof. And he was instructed to name the wind, that to name the element, you would have some kind of control over it and he'd be able to cushion his fall. Well, he doesn't. He face plants, he breaks some ribs, and there's some kind of lesson to be learned here. So I'm thinking about this scenario. I'm like, that's reminds me of Neo in The Matrix, when Morpheus has him jump off the building, and then he hits the ground. And they say nobody passes the jump test. It was called the jump test. So this got me thinking about the tarot card of the Fool, where the journey begins, the zero card, and the Fool is about to walk off a cliff, oblivious. And this is the beginning of the journey to enlightenment, the jump test. So I'm thinking about these things as I am looking at this book and imagining the scene where this kid gets pushed off the roof. And then I stop and I turn on the TV, and I'm watching this HBO show called The Boys, where the superhero, the Homelander, is trying to tell his child that he also has powers. So what does he do? He takes his child onto a roof and shoves him off and the kid face plants, knocked unconscious. And the mother comes out and she's like, "What did you do?" And he says, "It was only 20 feet. So I have a parallel here between the scenarios of the teacher and the student falling and hitting the ground, and the specifics of 20 feet also kind of stood out to me. But three different, rather the book, the movie, what I was thinking. So what I'm pointing out here is that I'm focusing on this certain theme, and then I see it. And you can't just say it's cognitive bias and I'm selectively observing things, because that was the very next scene in the show I was about to watch anyway. So what I find is that a lot of these synchronistic connections usually have some kind of a subtext that may actually relate to my understanding of how this place works. Anyway, let's continue. Roxy says, "Notice Gene Hackman in a book on a shelf they're hacking man's genes." I've seen that. I'm always skeptical about these stories as reported because they're usually subtext. All right, let's continue. In fact, if you look it up, it's called Jump Test Matrix. And again, I think I have it on a blog somewhere. I'll post a link if you want to see the scene I'm referring to. But that's one example of many, and I do document them on a separate blog. I don't like to mix it up with this because it tends to attract simulation theorists. And they try to take this to justify their metaphysical model. And simulation theory has way too many problems with it. I don't believe we're in a video game. And I reject the entire premise. Besides the fact that it's been popularized by Elon Musk. Like, I'm not going to follow Elon Musk's faith right now. Jordan says, "Let's examine the subtext of the Mad Mike rocket attempt." Yeah, what's your take on that? You know, people are like, "Oh, he was an actor and it was fake." It's like, what are you talking about? He was a daredevil for 30 years. Now, we only met him at the tail end of his career when he wasn't able to get enough attention to get his rocket stunt off the ground. We got him the money, the fame, the attention, the documentary, and everything else. He achieved that by collaborating with us. So he was kind of a latecomer to this was the late end of his career. So he was already a daredevil. He already existed. And he did survive the flat earth jump with the one that said research flat earth. There's a documentary about it. And then a couple of years later, the Science Channel had him for a show called Homemade Astronauts, where various civilians are trying to get to space. Jordan says, "Made flirts look dumber." No, that comment makes you look uninformed. It really does. Because it was the Science Channel show where his rocket crashed. And the thing is, so you're going to say that makes science look dumb? No, you're not. The fact is, you're bouncing off of secondhand hearsay about media misreportage. So, no, honestly, what it did is exposed how media illiterate many conspiracy theorists are, especially the flat earthers. So many flat earthers had no clue, and still have no clue, about Mad Mike. And it's not that the information isn't there. You know, I was his biographer. In fact, the biography I ghost wrote with him, was quoted in a New York Times article last April. So, like, I am the subject matter expert on this. And I hear people say things like, "You made us look dumb." It's like, no, quite the opposite. We were the only ones outside of the biblical box making any legitimate attempt to get more information. The only ones. And we were specifically outgrouped by the organizers, who were a bunch of pedos and feds. Like, I don't see you complaining about them. Like, oh, look, you had a flat earth conference where you got a sex offender, a pedo, a predator, and assorted weirdos, and that doesn't make the topic look insane. What makes them look insane is that instead of going to Antarctica 10 years ago, they were going into a conference room and selling VIP tickets so you could pay $200 to what, hang out with Mark Sargent? So I really think that, to your point, Jordan, you're media illiterate and you didn't do your research on the subject, but I don't care, because at that point we realized the mainstream media is a liar. It's a pathological liar, and they are narrative over facts every single time. And then when you really get down to the details here, the people who are knocking this thing don't understand the magnitude of the accomplishment. We're talking about somebody in a garage at home with his own hands building a rocket and sending himself 1,800 feet into the air in front of cameras, internal cameras, drone cameras, multiple documentaries. I mean, it was a resounding success. He earned the title World's Greatest Daredevil, easily eclipsed Evel Knievel. And, you know, I mean, had he survived, I think his fame only would have grown. But, you know, that's what his friend said after the event, after when it happened. You know, I called immediately. He's like, well, he died a daredevil's death. And when he first called, and this was in the New Yorker in 2018, looking for life on the flat earth, he called into a live stream. We had 400 something people listening. He said, I saw your billboard and I want to do this stunt where I will launch with your billboard on the side of my rocket, and then I'm going to go into space later. And he described how he was going to go into space. And he told me that he only had a 30% chance of living. So that's kind of interesting in itself, because he didn't say there's a 70% chance I'm going to die. He said I have a 30% chance of surviving. And a lot of craven, cowardly flat earth haters were relentlessly brutal, just mocking, hating, accusing me of embezzling money and that the rocket was fake. We couldn't shut them up, honestly. The opposition to what we were doing in our attempt to discredit NASA and draw a lot of attention to their fakery was undermined by flat earthers. That was the main opposition, interestingly enough. So there's your subtext. Let's continue. So I was talking about how can we confidently call things fake. We have standards of evidence. We have also this position of being informed disbelievers. If I say something's fake, I have reasons. I don't say things are fake without a reason for doing so. There's a lot of nuance that goes into it, which is why I put out Exit Trutherville, so that we don't get misrepresented. Passion of the Christus actor. Jim Caviezel, Christ lightning hoax. So I'm adding a lot of articles to the Wikipedia that we have, our auto hoax wiki. You can find this at infiniteplainsociety.com or ips.monster. And I'm starting to add a lot of psyops that don't involve shootings or terror attacks. Things like this: Mel Gibson's Passion of the Christ that starred 33-year-old Jim Caviezel. During the movie's filming, he was struck by lightning and died. He was giving a Sermon on the Mount, and he died, but he came back from the dead. So I'm doing some research into this obvious psyop. They say this caused him to have open heart surgery. In addition to the lightning strike, during the film, they accidentally whipped him with a scourge, resulting in 14-inch scars. See, I would like to see his scars from the scourge compared to the scars on Tucker Carlson's back, where the alien scratched him. He says a cross weighing over 150 pounds fell on him, causing him to bite through his tongue and his cheek, and this scene was included in the film. Caviezel has spoken about these experiences and reflected on the spiritual significance and the challenges he faced during the production of the film. Now, this is the guy who was in Sound of Freedom, which the QAnons believed signified that they were going to save the children, and is based on Tim Ballard, who ironically is now being charged with human trafficking. But Jim Caviezel, spelled with a Q, major QAnon grifter, they're part of this whole fetishizing of satanic ritual abuse community Real sick people. But notable, too, that this is a Mel Gibson production. So you got the Mel Gibson is already kind of connected to the Q cult. Then he's in that conspiracy theory movie. We've already connected him with 9/11 predictive programming, like in The Patriot. So he moves in the same circle. He was recently in the news because when LA got burned, his house supposedly burned. So he's attached to that psyop. And then his movie, Flight Risk, foreshadowed the aerial immolations of January and February. But it's just interesting to see how these characters move in the same circles. Gibson, Caviezel, QAnon, Trump. Caviezel was hanging out with Trump at Bedminster, watching Sound of Freedom. And then Mel Gibson hanging out near Trump at the UFC fights. Isabel Ann says, the media cares more about money than facts. Yeah, well, look, people believe headlines. That's what it comes down to. They believe headlines. So the headlines say, flat earthers trying to prove the earth is flat by launching 5,000 feet in the air. Well, that was never stated. Nobody would ever make that claim, and it's absurd. The facts go against it. Even that initial New Yorker article said that that wasn't true. And yet, people run with it. He was actually mad about it. I said it didn't matter. I said at that point, the main thing was staying relevant enough to be in the headline so that when you do your stunt, you have the world watching. Because the stunt was going to be a balloon, and I saw the craft. The balloon with the craft, the rocket. And the balloon would take it above the heaviest part of the atmosphere. It's 20 miles up, reaches the stratosphere, and then the rocket launches from there. Okay, someone asked me about this. I'm not really familiar. I'll look into it. So, this was from Till. And if you want to send me any links, infiniteplainsociety@gmail.com, I'll be happy to look it over and proffer an opinion. Clockwork113 says, nothing new under the sun. No, they recycle everything. Look, Jack Posobiec had this live stream, Rise of the Luigis and the Cybertruck Terrorists. Now, a lot of these media figures are easy to point out as likely being insiders. So Jack Posobiec, for example, Rise of the Luigis and the Tesla Terrorists. Of course, his reportage on this is going to be from the bias of MSM Plus, mainstream friendly, everything is real. But he's the one who started the Pizzagate psyop. He went to Comet Pizza and live streamed from there. And the Pizzagate psyop was a recycling of the Satanic Panic. So as Clockwork says, nothing new under the sun. They're consistently recycling narratives and characters. And this is when I coined the term Metascript, when I came to realize that the summer of 2020 was molded off of the dominant narratives of the summers of 67 and 68. And that there is this, what I'd consider to be recycling, or, I think that's one way of putting it. Okay, let's see. Yeah, so my post here with the QAnoners I talked about earlier, they're showing this picture of Justin Bieber's eye twitching. They love their martyrs. I even see truthers blaming the vax on George Foreman's death. It's like, that was 5 years ago. You guys can't claim this stuff anymore. Vaxageddon was a hoax. Let it go. Okay. Phones are open, 505-510-4226. We still have a few more minutes here. We're going to be back on a regular schedule now that my exit Trutherville course was complete. That just took a little bit of time, but it needed to be done. Calm down. Did you look into the Robin Williams death hoax? Well, I'm certain his death was a hoax. And you know what? I'm going to put that in the wiki. Because the timing of his death, so this isn't even predictive programming. It's concurrent. When Robin Williams was dying, the Family Guy episode with Robin Williams was airing at the same time. And the Family Guy episode featured this idea of Robin Williams and suicide. It was kind of built into it. I'm not sure if you all remember this. Robin Williams, Family Guy. And so people said, oh, he was murdered by the Illuminati and all kinds of stuff. Very strange, though. Okay, here we go. Robin Williams, Family Guy, death. And whenever the media comments on its own predictive programming, it just stands out as, okay, they're almost aware. BBC showed a repeat of this episode. Okay, here it is. August 11th, the day that Robin Williams committed suicide. The episode aired at 11:25. The news of his death broke at 11:50 during the episode. Viewers reacted to the coincidence, highlighting that in the episode, Peter attempted suicide. Family Guy predicts Robin Williams' death. So how do you explain that? Simulation? We live in a video game? Or something else? And the only other explanation, without reaching for the divine fallacy, and the one that our greater body of evidence supports, is that there is an alignment between entertainment and quote-unquote real news events. And this is just one example of it. What's the bigger point to this particular event? I'm not sure yet. But this is just an example of the synchronization. An episode of cartoon comedy Family Guy about Robin Williams featured a failed suicide attempt that aired at the exact time his own death was announced. Viewers were shocked over the uncanny timing. The Family Guy also had coincidences with the Boston bombing, where Peter is pushing a couple buttons, he hears two explosions, like the Boston bombing, two explosions, and then he's mowing people down during a marathon in his car. During the episode, Peter tries to commit suicide in a desperate attempt to stop clones appearing. The internet is full of comments about the bizarre coincidence, with people calling it weird after watching it air on the BBC. They don't have a way to contextualize this information. Like it's in their box. It can only be a coincidence. Dr. Bax Ackworth says, coincidence is short for cognitive dissonance. Yeah, to call it a coincidence is to be lazy. To call it evidence of simulation is to fall for the divine fallacy, which means that you've ruled out man, or you haven't even looked into it. Like, before you reach for something that doesn't exist yet, or that hasn't been proven to exist, like God, simulation, aliens, before you can reach to something outside of what we can observe and test, you have to consider the mundane solutions, the mundane possibilities. So, for example, you see a light in the sky. Is it a drone, a UFO, or an airplane? You wouldn't frame the question this way, because these aren't equal possibilities. It's an airplane, unless you can rule out an airplane. You wouldn't assume these others to even be possible. So within the realm of possibility, we know that the news media is frequently used for propaganda purposes. We know that the entertainment seems to serve the same purpose. And therefore, it's not hard to rule out the possibility that there is some intentionality here behind all of these. Okay, let's see here. What's up, Mingo? I woke up to Tim on Dark Matter. I'll be updating the archives, by the way. So the 24. I want to turn the 24/7 live stream on again. I'm just developing a bot that can relay comments so that we can have some interaction between YouTube and Discord. So I'll be setting that up. I have the computer ready to go. It's just a few clicks. But we're working on setting up a 24-hour stream on one of my backup channels. And this will just be a 24-hour chat, which I'll be monitoring and screen capping and, of course, bringing people into the conversation. All right, moving on. Yeah, hoaxathon, says Peter W. And the Boston Hoaxathon was a big reveal. A lot of tricks and tactics were revealed in the analysis of that event. The main character in that one was Joker Sarneff. They called him Joker. His death penalty is reinstated the same day the Batman movie came out. Lord Laney says, when the actors on the world stage die, do they set them out to pasture on Crisis Actor Island, or are they plastic surgery and recycled? Or Jonah Mendez. Maybe you need a glossary. Good questions. I had to dig, but I do recall, I think it was a 9/11 phone call from the airplane. The person who said something and heard somebody say, let's roll, I believe it was a spouse of somebody who worked at one of these at Fox, I think. But he remarried later. But his new wife looked like an altered version of the one who died on 9/11. So I kind of think it's recycling. I think they recycle their actors. I don't think there is a Crisis Actor Island. Spycraft and infiltrating other countries, disguises. These are all things out of the purview of the intelligence agencies and have been perfected. So it's not hard to imagine how it would work. I mean, I wonder how you would hide somebody like a Kobe Bryant, for example. Or George Floyd. Where's George Floyd? See, here's another example of MSM+. Mainstreamers think George Floyd died under the knee of systemic racism, embodied by Derek Chauvin. Conspiracy theorists believe he died of a fentanyl overdose. So they both believe he died. But one thinks he died because Biden opened the borders and let China ship fentanyl in. So they blame the left. The other side blames the right in their defense of systemic racism. So they're in total agreement. MSM, MSM+. We represent MSM-. We are socially distanced from the screen, far enough back to get a zoomed out perspective. Now, speaking of Robbie Williams, I don't think that he came back as Javier Milei. Many people say that he is literally Robin Williams. The president of Argentina. Is this Robin Williams in 2025? No. This guy's only 54. And you can go back in time and look at his pictures. I don't even see that striking of a resemblance except certain angles, certain smiles. But for some reason, that kind of took off and some people still believe it's him. No, I don't think so. Calm Down says, have you looked into the Buddy Holly death hoax? He turned up later playing a famous band in the UK called The Shadows. I'll have to look at that one. Fascinating. Wouldn't surprise me. I may have seen it. I'm pretty sure that John Lennon became Steve Jobs. It fits. The story fits. I'm with that one for sure. I'm pretty sure that Jim Morrison fake died. All kinds of indicators of a hoax there. And returned as Rush Limbaugh. And I also think another 27 clubber, because there's a few of these 27 clubbers. Jim Morrison, they died at 27. In fact, there's a Die Young curse, and then there's the 27 Club. These are all worth looking at. I think the more recent addition to the 27 Club would probably be Kurt Cobain. But some say Janis Joplin came back as Democracy Now! What's that one? Who's that one from Democracy Now? She does look like Janis Joplin. Let's see if I can find her face. It's a fascinating rabbit trail. Here it is. And I think you can be pretty... Amy Goodman, which is kind of funny. Anyway, these aren't necessary to explain anything, but I mean, you look at the Challenger explosion, and you're like, wait a minute here. How do all these people have twins? Dr. Beck, Ashworth says, Prince predicting his own death was a good one. His song title, I Would Die For You. You, 21st letter, he died on 4/21. Yeah, there's quite a lot with Prince that we could get into as well. And it goes deep into the script. The elevator, the color purple, the timing of it was also interesting. After he died, there was someone named Pedro who had died performing a Prince song. He was performing Purple Rain, like some kind of acrobat performance, in an elevator 100 feet above a crowd at this music festival where Green Day performed. And he fell and died in front of everybody right there on the stage. Some 42-year-old. What was the festival called? I think it was in Madrid. Anyway, he was performing a Prince song in an elevator, and he fell and died. Let's see if I can get his name. Yeah, Pedro Monroy, 42 years old. Mad Cool Festival. Fell 100 feet at this Mad Cool Festival. So he was paying homage, more or less, to Prince in the elevator, and he has this elevator contraption where he's doing the tribute, and then he fell and died, and then Green Day came out and performed, which they were criticized for. Anyway, the Prince thing is worth looking into. I think I need to spend some time on these individual psyops and give each one its own wiki page. Mango says, New Mexico, 3 dead, 15 injured. You know about that? What is it? And look, I don't automatically call things fake. Low death toll, probably real. You know, if it's in Chicago on a Saturday night and it's a nightclub, it's real. If it's handguns, it's real. Like the fake ones are generally just AR-15s, Armalite. Hendricks says Morgan Freeman. Look, there's a whole grip of them. But a lot of that could be disinformation. I mean, it wouldn't be necessary. But if it follows a logic, I'll look into it. Like, it would make sense that the alternative culture would be influenced by these children of intelligence agents. And then later, they have some other gigs waiting for them. Even Jim Morrison talked about coming back as some kind of suit and tie CEO type. And who does he become? Like the spokesmouth for American conservatism? So there's some sense, it does make some sense that it would be a lifetime gig. Okay, let's move on. I think we covered most of what I wanted to get into today. Make sure you get on the newsletter. I'm sending out archives with all the relevant links. I try to do it the very next day. The main development here is I'm developing bots. In fact, we already have a bot active at a few different. We have one in the Telegram, the Discord, autohoax.com, and I'm specifically working on developing a bot for Twitter. I have one on Blue Sky, and it's put out like 200 tweets since I set it up. And it generates tweets based on the internal prompting I give it and the knowledge base that I give it. So I've been creating auto-hoax bots, uploading Autohoaxology 101 into their heads and testing it out. But the project is this. They're going to evolve to the point where they will be automatically scraping the headlines and responding to likely hoaxes, and their posts and their tweets and all the stuff will be substantive and useful. These aren't spam bots like the sex bots that are always liking my comments and my tweets. Miley Cyrus, Ayesha Curry, yeah, 100%. Yeah, that one's kind of interesting, and it goes deep because Miley Cyrus played that Hannah Montana character, a character who's like a normie and then a rock star. And then Ayesha Curry is like someone who shows up in the show. So you have this overlap. And the theory is that Ayesha Curry doesn't exist. That it's Miley Cyrus in one of these very sophisticated costumes. Now, I'm constantly looking at tutorials on AI and stuff, and one of the trends lately has been creating AI avatars. And there are people creating fake people and using these fake people to promote affiliate products. There are fake OnlyFans accounts where the person doesn't exist. So this is where we're at. So the idea that celebrities would be involved in spinning off characters, that they could do this even, yeah, it's well within the realm of possibility. And the sophisticated, hyper-realistic masks that are foolproof were a secret. They were kept a secret for many years. So deep fakery has been around for decades. Deep fakery is as old as spycraft. But digital deep fakes are just the most recent iteration of an old and perfected art form. Okay, well, today is the 24th. We'll continue. Oh, by the way, tomorrow, that's what I need to bring up. Tomorrow, I will be live on Fakeologist. This will be 6 p.m. Mountain Time. And Lynn will be there. And I think we're going to talk about Kubrick, among other things. Like, I'm tired of 9/11. I have 9/11 fatigue. I've got COVID fatigue. I've got no interest in rehashing these old hoaxes as though we're still debating whether they actually happened. However, she and I have a fundamental disagreement about, does 9/11 constitute a real terror attack, and is it Bush's fault? Is it the Pentagon's fault? And I'm saying, no, this is solely the product of the PSYOP entertainment complex. And instead of looking at Bush or Cheney or Osama bin Laden or Israel, you should be looking at media itself and what media really is. And Kubrick is just the director that stands out with 9/11, but he is by no means the only one with some creative input into that operation. Lord Laney says, could you have chats and replays scraped to help bots catch up faster? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That is actually what I want to do. Get all the transcripts, all the comments, and feed the bots. So I understand the process, and it's a matter of just practicing and getting a little more refined with these bots as they go, and preventing them from going to the other side because of their programming. For example, I had a bot on Blue Sky, and suddenly I'm getting retweeted, and it's because it's calling out flat earthers as going too far with their skepticism. So it's masquerading as me, and it's making these pro-globe arguments, which I'm fine with this bot making stuff up, but I can see that it's actually kind of doing damage control. But I expected that. Mazel says, can Lynn discuss anything other than 9/11? I don't consider it to be a traumatic event anymore, nor is it sacrosanct or a sacred cow, and it's not even that useful for teaching people, because it's ancient history. You see these TikTokers who are up to speed with the most recent stuff, and they don't care. It wasn't a formative event for them. So, to me, it's a dead horse. And I think the only reason why some people are still stuck on it is they cannot comprehend the scale of fakeability. And that may be the only reason it's useful, the scale of it. All right, this is Chief Crow, Auto Hoax or GTFO. Thanks for joining. Appreciate the comments. Lots of comments tonight, by the way. More than 200 people at some points, if we include the audio stream. Again, if you're skeptical of what I'm talking about, you should be. But I put everything out in a course. Exit Trutherville. Go to infiniteplanesociety.com and take the course, go through the books, look at the material, refute it if you can. And it does contain the most advanced thinking with regard to mass media and government-controlled media manipulation. No other branch of conspiracy thought delves into the role that media fakery plays and how ubiquitous it is. They actually downplay it, which is something I refuse to do. All right, thanks again. We'll see you tomorrow.